What's going on, guys? It's Jacob from Topside MMA, and today I'm bringing you my UFC Vegas 109 betting breakdown video. So let's get right into it. This card is a really tricky one because there's so many huge favorites that it's hard to find any real value. So I'm actually taking this card pretty light in terms of what I have on it, in terms of like the pre-betting slate, So I got it pretty light. I don't only have a couple plays going. I have a bunch of potential plays that I got shown here that I'll go over. But in terms of what I already have placed as of right now, it's pretty light. I think this is going to be more of a live betting opportunity for this card because all of these big favorites, if they face any adversity, I expect these lines to move around a lot. So I'm not going super heavy before the fight start. I'm more so looking for the live betting opportunities, but just to get right into it, first up, we got Cody Brundage versus Eric McConaughey. I like Cody Brundage in this spot. I think for these odds, it's pretty fair. He's been able to prove himself in the UFC. We know he can hang in the UFC. He can beat guys in the UFC. Yeah, he's not a top level prospect. He's not going to get the belt anytime, but at the same time, he's able to beat guys. He's shown that. He's proved that. And his last fight, he looked better than he's normally looked in the past. He went through a little skid emotionally and mentally, and I think he's kind of getting out of that. He's looking better. The weigh-ins, he didn't look amazing, but I can't let that influence me too much because I think they're both coming up on short notice, so it's not like it's going to have a huge impact one way or the other for either guy to have a huge advantage in this. So I like Cody Brundage. He should win this fight for these odds. I think it's a playable line. I think the money line is a little bit better than that. It wasn't 185. I think I got it for like minus 170, I think. So I got it a little bit lighter than that. So yeah, I have a half unit on that. I also have a half or a quarter unit on Cody Brundage by KO. I think that's his best chance to win. I could see this going late. I could see it going on, but I wanted to put a little quarter unit sprinkle on this just because McConaughey, all of his losses have been from knockout. We see him get knocked out in the UFC. He's got knocked out on the regional scene, and it doesn't take a whole lot. So the second he gets his chin cracked and it gets touched, he goes down. He got wobbled bad against Nursultan Ruzaboyev, which it's hard to blame him for that. But I think Cody Brundage has the same amount of power that Nursultan Ruzaboyev does, if not more. Especially they're stepping up too. They're going up to light heavyweight for this one, so he's going to have even more weight, more power in his hands. I think Cody Brundage gets to his chin. He should put him out of there. But I wanted to play at both ends because I didn't want to get screwed in case he does. Maybe he knocks him down, but he's not able to get him out of there. Maybe he knocks him down, gets on his back, and goes for a submission. Something like that could happen. I think Cody Brundage could win this fight any way possible. So if you wanted to play it a little bit more safe, you could just go straight up with the money line. I think it's decent value, or you could use it potentially as a parlay piece. I just think there's enough risk to where I didn't want to use it as a parlay piece. I was like, screw it. You know what? I'm just going to go with it. Cody Brundage has made me some coin in the past, so I'm a little bit more willing to throw something on him because I've had decent results with him in the past, so, I kind of feel like we can expect what to see out of a Cody Brundage fight. So, anyway, I like that play this week. And then next up, I got the Gabriel Hernandez versus Julia Storienko. I like Gabriel Hernandez in over half a round. For minus 260, it basically cuts her minus 400, or I think she's a minus 440 right now. And it cuts that down all the way down to a minus 260, so almost like in half. Considering the odds are so crazy for her, I don't think she gets her out of there in under half a round. So 2.5 minutes. I just think Julia, if she gets to the ground, she's the type of girl, if she gets hurt, she could just pull guard. And I think Gabriel Hernandez could let her back up. She could work the clinch. Like, anything could happen. But I just think for the two women like this, they're both, I don't want to say Julia is very durable, but I don't think Gabriel Hernandez is going to be able to really knock her out in under half of a round. This is a little bit more risky too. It's just, I didn't want to play a prop like a submission or a knockout or a decision prop. I just figured, what, screw it. Take it over, cut the odds down a ton. If she gets knocked out in under half a round, which she's never happened, that's why I looked at it too. It's like, it's never happened to Julia, and Gabrielle's never done that before. So if it happens, it happens. I just take one, it would just be unlucky. But for minus 260, I'm like, that's just decent enough with the odds to where I could play it as a single. I don't love it, but it's hard to find a ton of value for single bets this week. So this was something I like Gabriel Hernandez a lot in this spot. I was also considering the over 1.5 rounds at minus 160, but I thought, what, screw it. For those odds, there's always a chance. Maybe Gabriel Hernandez starts to get to wailing on her, and maybe towards the end of the first round, she's beaten and battered, and depending on the ref, depending on who's in there, maybe they let it continue, maybe they don't, there's just too much uncertainty, especially for minus 160. I'm like, over a 1.5 for women's fight too, I'm like, kind of drew me off of that. So I took the over 1.5 for Gabriel Hernandez, same game parlay. And then I was also looking, I've been considering doing a Julia Stoliarenko round 1 sub because I feel like that's her only way to win this fight. Especially as they start to get tired later on. She looked like she had a bad weight cut. So I don't see her whipping out some crazy armbar sub in the last 5 minutes of a fight. I just don't see that happening. I think if she does get the sneaky sub off, it's probably going to be in round 1. But Gabrielle Fernandez is a very high level BJJ practitioner. I wasn't able to find her exact belt ranking, but I did see that she was a purple belt in 2021. So I figured, okay, she's probably at bare minimum a very high ranking brown belt or just a somewhat fresh black belt. So she's got to be somewhere in there. I assume she's a black belt because I've heard that rumored before by people, and I've heard people say that in comments and certain things online, but I just haven't been able to see that proof for myself, so I can't say with 100% certainty. I'm assuming she's a BJJ level black belt. We haven't seen her in any real tricky situations where I've been worried about that from her. I don't really worry about her getting subbed, and I think she's smart enough too. I think she probably has the good enough game plan, high enough fight IQ to realize, all right, this is this girl's only opportunity to win this fight. I'm the better striker. Let's keep it on the feet by any means possible. So I think as long as she can withstand, there's probably going to be, Julia might have a moment of success where maybe it gets to the ground, maybe they start wrestling, they get in a scramble, and maybe it's a little close here for a second. But I just don't think she's going to have enough in her. I don't think Gabrielle Fernandez is going to be vulnerable enough on the ground to be able to be exploited by something like an armbar. So I like Gabrielle Fernandez a lot in this one. I was considering over 1.5, like I said, or the sub as a hedge play, but I haven't played those yet. Similar with Uros Medic versus Gilbert Urbina, I was considering Gilbert Urbina via sub as kind of like a sprinkle Hail Mary. That line is getting cut down, though. When I looked earlier this week, it was like plus 800 or something, and now it's plus 550. So I just threw that out there. I'm probably not going to play it, but just for the memes, I had to include that in here. Jocelyn Edwards over 1.5 takedowns landed. That's the next fight. Jocelyn Edwards versus Priscilla Cachoeira. I was considering this, because I think Jocelyn Edwards realizes her way to win this fight is going to be in the wrestling, in the grappling, taking it to the ground. That's Priscilla's one weakness. So I think the over 1.5 takedowns landed for minus 200 is actually pretty decent value. I don't think she's going to get one takedown and instantly submit her. I think it's the Chelsea Chandler fight where she got her out of there in the first round that really is kind of influencing this line, but I just think Priscilla has a granite chin. I don't see her getting finished. I don't see her getting knocked out unless it's like, who was it? Like Michael Morales versus Neil Magny, where he's literally like face down on the mat and he's just eating bombs. Unless it's something like that, I don't see her getting a knockout loss in this fight. So I think over 1.5 takedowns. I do see this fight going a little bit longer too. So I think for over 1.5, I think she should be able to land a takedown in the first round and maybe one in the second round, because Priscilla does have decent takedown defense on her stats. I think it's like 67% or something like that. But I could see a girl like Jocelyn Edwards, she's strong. She's really compact. She has a lot of muscle. I think she should be able to take someone like Priscilla down. I'm personally not sure if I'm going to get here or not this week. Depending on how the earlier fights go, I might. But as of right now, I don't think I will. But it just depends, I guess, on how the Gabriella fight goes. Next up, we got Elijah Smith versus Toshomi Kazama. Now, I like the Elijah Smith finish props. They're just so damn juiced. I haven't been able to really pull the trigger on it. I'm kind of waiting to see, like I said with the other one too, the Jocelyn Edwards fight. I'm going to wait and see how the earlier fights go because I have a decent amount. I mean, I guess a lot of my action this week is on between the Cody Brundage and the Gabrielle Fernandez. So I'm a little heavy on early in the card. So I'm waiting to kind of dip my toes in the water on these later fights and some of the later prelims and early main card until the first couple fights are over, since I have a little bit more action there. But yeah, same thing like for the live play too. I think Elijah Smith is a good live betting opportunity because there's always a chance that Kazama has some grappling success early on. Maybe he has a submission threat and maybe it's close, but Elijah Smith gets out of it. Those will cut those odds down a ton. I think if Kazama has any potential success and it looks like, oh shit, like maybe he's about to land a submission, like maybe he has a tight choke and Elijah's fighting to get out of it, those odds are going to cut drastically. So I think anything getting that line down, like I said here, from minus 800 to something like a minus 250 or better is definitely good value. Do I think it gets there? Probably not, but it's a good live betting opportunity if it were to do so. But yeah, I'm looking, the prop that excites me the most, I guess, this week is probably the Elijah Smith in round 1 or round 2, just because it makes those odds a little bit better. I think if this does get to the third round, I don't know how likely Elijah Smith will be to get that knockout. If it gets that far, Because we've seen his cardio has been somewhat of a concern in the past, and I know he's fixing that. I know he's working on that a lot, but I think if it gets beyond the first and second round, it's a lot less likely to happen. So I think if you're going to take the finish props this week, might as well just take it round 1 or round 2, because there's a chance Kazuma goes for some crazy grappling heavy game plan in round 1, is able to wrestle the entire time. Even then, that could cut the lines down, or the odds. I think if Kazuma is even able to survive to the second round, these odds are going to cut. They're going to drop. I don't see, if they have a tight grappling back and forth clinch against the cage for an entire first round, that is going to be a minus 800 favorite. I imagine that line would probably cut in half. So be aware for the live betting opportunities for this one. I think they could be there if this fight isn't over within the first round. So next up, we got Julius Walker versus Rafael Sakaria. It's the same thing. I like Julius Walker via KO in round 1 or round 2. If you're going to play it this week, that's probably your best bet. Depending on how the earlier fights go, I probably will play this line just because I think that's how this fight goes. And at minus 175, I don't think it's terrible value. Definitely not great. That doesn't really entice me at all. But at the same time, it's not terrible value. So I can't say I hate it. But I haven't played it yet. Same thing as the Elijah Smith fight. The same exact reasoning for the live bets. If this fight gets close at all, if it makes it out of the first round, these lines should tighten up, and that's when the live betting opportunities will be there. So make sure you guys stay tuned for those. Keep your eye out for those. That's where the real opportunity is going to be. But anyway, next up, we got Eric Anders versus Christian Leroy Duncan. I don't mind the Christian Leroy Duncan minus 3.5 spread. His money line is juiced, so it's hard. You can't play that as a single. You have to do it in the parlay if you want it. I feel like it's risky if you're taking the KO or the decision prop, because Eric Anders has been dropped in a ton of recent fights against guys who should not have dropped him, but he only has 1 knockout loss. So it's like, and we've seen Christian Leroy Duncan too. He's had knockout opportunities, like in his fight against Pulev, and he just didn't go for it. He didn't have the killer instinct to get him out of there. So I don't want to play this either way. I feel like whichever way you play this, it's going to be the opposite. If you play the KO prop, it's going to be the most boring decision you've ever seen. If you play the decision prop, it's going to be a round 1 knockout. I hate doing shit like that. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So if you're taking the minus 3.5 spread, it could cover you in case it goes to a decision and CLD gets the 20 or 30, 27. So that would cover you there. So I don't hate that. I'd rather do that than go for the KO or like playing a KO single or a decision single. I'd rather do that just in case, because it covers you on both ends. And if it does go to a decision, I don't see Eric Anders really having a ton of success. What's he going to do? I don't see him having any success. And especially if CLD, maybe this does go to the scorecards for whatever reason. If he gets a knockdown in any of these rounds, for one, that secures him the round, almost guaranteed to secure him that round. But let's say he gets the drop, he drops him and he starts to wail on him, and towards the end of the round he's barely hanging on. That could easily be a 10-8 round. I could easily see a 10-8 round in this fight if he gets a knockdown but isn't able to finish it. So I think the minus 3.5 spread does have some good value. I just haven't got to it just yet. But next up, we got Miles Johns versus Gene Matsumoto. I like the Miles Johns plus 7.5 alternate spread. I think there's some decent value. Same thing as above. I'm waiting for these earlier fights to go. If they go well, I probably will have some action on this plus 7.5 alternate spread. But if it's a little bit shaky, I wouldn't want to risk potential profit over a Miles Johns alternate spread. But at the same time, I do think there's decent value there. Same with the live betting. I think there's going to be a decent live betting opportunity. I think these lines should tighten up. I think this fight's going to be pretty damn close. This could be a good hedge spot, honestly. If this fight does start to tighten up the lines, this is what I'm considering too. I haven't done it yet, but you could go with the Miles Johns money line before the fight starts. And if at any point this fight gets close, the odds are going to tighten up. You could hit the hedge play. I'd say it's a coin toss if I do that or not. I'm very close to doing that play. So if you made it this far in the video, I think that's a good play, and I'm probably going to end up doing something with that. So, but anyway, live betting opportunity in terms of anything before, I don't have it quite yet, but I do like the potential hedge, with the live and the pre-fight money lines. But next up, we got Andre Fili versus Christian Rodriguez. Same thing. I think it's a little bit wider than it should be. I think C-Rod does win this fight, but you could do the same exact thing with the Miles Johns fight, honestly. You could take a little sprinkle on Andre Fili, and if it's close. The thing with this, though, is I would not do it with this fight. You could, but I'm personally not going to, is because Andre Fili is not as durable as Miles Johns is, in my opinion. We just saw Fili get choked out in round 1 due to stupid decision making. That's not something I like to see, so that would probably take me off of this, a potential live and pre-fight hedge play, but I see the value there. I see why people might consider that. I'm personally not going to. I think the better value is with Miles Johns, but anyway, I think if C-Rod has some trouble early on, I could see these lines tightening up, and C-Rod's the type of guy, he gets better as the fight progresses, so I think the potential late round 1, round 2, maybe even round 3 live bet for C-Rod is definitely live and could be a good option this week. So depending on how the fight goes for a live bet. Next up, we got Yasmin Lucinda versus Angela Hill. I got nothing on this. I got her included. I got a bet on this fight in a parlay at the very bottom that we'll get to. But in terms of singles, nothing's really standing out to me. The over is so juiced. There's not a ton of value for me personally. I don't know why I have this odds here. Yeah, there we go. But yeah, next up we got Steve Erceg versus Odie Osborne. I don't mind the Steve Erceg -3.5 spread this week. I don't hate it. It's just, you can't take Steve Erceg at -575, whatever the hell he's at right now. You just can't do it. There's no value there. Nothing's really enticing me to get on that. The live betting opportunity this week, that's where the real money could be made. I think if Steve Erceg deals with any adversity early on, because I think Odie could come out with the hand swinging, let's say he drops Steve Erceg early in round 1, these odds are going to completely tighten up. So I think if there's any live betting value, it's definitely going to be in this fight. I think there's a ton of live betting value, and I think you just wait to see what happens with that, because at -575 in a flyweight fight, or I guess moving up to bantamweight, but short notice, it's like there's so many red flags with this. Steve Erceg should be able to win this fight. He should. If he loses this fight, he needs to reconsider a lot of shit in his life, but because he has that grappling advantage, he should take it to the ground. That's why if you think he's going to get the submission, you could play that sub prop. If you think it's going to go to a decision, you could play the decision prop. I think the -3.5 spread is a little bit safer. Or like it's not even that safe though, considering the odds. It's just like, if you want to play either one of them, you could go with the -3.5 because that covers you. Let's say he just grapples the entire time, but he's not able to get a sub, but it's still 30-27. You could take that -3.5 spread and you'd be good, because you'd hope at least one judge would give it to you. At least one judge would have the 30-27 to cash that. But at the same time, if it does go, if he does get the submission, it counts that for that too. So it covers both ends. It's a little bit less riskier, but it's just the odds are just not great. So I haven't been able to really be convinced enough to put something on this. I think the live betting play for this one is probably your best bet. Same for Roman Dolidze versus Anthony Hernandez. I think any of the value is all on Roman Dolidze. I don't see a ton of value in Anthony Hernandez unless you take the later props. I know I don't have it on here, but I was considering at first something like Anthony Hernandez over 2.5 rounds, doing it like a same game parlay. I think there's decent value in that, because I think if Anthony Hernandez wins, it's going to be later in the second half of this fight, because I don't see him getting Roman Dolidze out of there early, especially how he looked on the scales too. I don't think he's going to come out here super hot early on. I think he's going to try and maintain himself a little bit, even though his cardio is so damn good. Considering the weight cut didn't look great, I have some concerns, and I don't know if he'll really come out of the gates blazing hot, going for a finish early on. I just don't see that. Roman Dolidze is very durable, so I think if Anthony Hernandez does win, he could get a finish, but if he does, it'll likely be later on into the fight, later on in the later rounds, if not a decision. So if there's any pre-bet or pre-fight bet that I would play for this week, and I might get on it depending on how the earlier fights go. I just haven't been able to pull the trigger on it yet, but if I were to put anything on this, I would either do a Roman Dolidze just straight up money line before the fight starts, or I would do an Anthony Hernandez in over 2.5 rounds or something like that, or 3.5 or something in that range. So you could, in theory, do something like a hedge with this, like try to balance it out on either side. I don't know if I'm going to get there or not, but I just want to say that. And I think this is going to be a good live betting spot too, if I haven't said that already. It's like the other ones. Anthony Hernandez is a big favorite, but Roman Dolidze is probably going to have the best success early on in this fight, depending on how Roman Dolidze does early on. I see this line tightening up a ton. I kind of wrote it in this description. It kind of almost reminds me of like an RDR versus Whitaker. I could see this line going all over the place depending on which guy is having success throughout the fight. I think it would likely go back and forth round to round. I think these live odds are going to shoot all over the place. I think if you get in early, if you can get good plus money for either guy, I think it's worth it to throw a little something on it, because then you can go, if the fight switches direction and changes course of who's dominating, and the odds completely flip. Throw a sprinkle on the other end, throw one on the other. You know, you know what I mean? Like, I can see some good hedge opportunities here for live betting, you know, for the money line. So that's what I'm waiting on. I'd rather do that, look for something like that, as opposed to bet before the fight even starts, because I think the live betting spots are probably more profitable and they make more sense to me personally. So in terms of the pre-betting or pre-fight betting, I'm staying off of it. But let's get to the parlays now. Now, for the play of the week, I got 2 plays of the week because I like both of these. I like the lines in all of these, but I didn't want to throw it in some one mega big parlay. You could if you wanted to. I just wanted to split it up to be a little less risky, you know, just for my personal style, I guess. But the first one, we got Jocelyn Edwards money line. The second one, we got Christian Leroy Duncan money line, -204. I think both of these fighters win. I've given my in-depth breakdowns in my last video, so if you want to see those, go watch them. I just think both of these fighters have a clear way to win. They have a clear way to beat their opponents. I think it's good value for a parlay piece in both of them. Even though the lines are pretty damn juiced, I think for -200 for a parlay with 2, I'm cool with that. You know, those are the type of plays that I actually don't mind. You know, about a -200 2-piece parlay. That's what I like to kind of aim for around, where it's not super risky, but you can still get some decent return. And then the second one, Gabriel Fernandez money line and Angela Hill +7.5 alternate spread for -185. I like this a lot. You know, Angela Hill is super durable. I think she should be able to survive. Lucindo has not been able to really finish people inside the UFC. And I think this is going to be a close, competitive split decision. I got it written all over it. Now, the only way this would not win in terms of the Angela Hill side is if Lucindo finishes her, which I don't see happening. She's never been knocked out. Angela Hill has good enough ground game to be able to survive. She's not going to get choked out by Lucindo. I do not see that happening because Angela Hill doesn't have any cardio concerns to be worried about. So I don't see her fading on later in this fight. And I just don't think Lucindo's dangerous enough. But at the same time, this also would lose if it was a 30-27. But I just don't think Angela Hill has gone to, even in unanimous decision losses that she's had, like girls against like Tabitha Ricci, it was still like a 29-28. She's like +3.5 would have covered in a lot of her recent losses that were unanimous if they weren't split decisions, where a split decision would cover it too. I'm just being super safe for the play of the week. I want to keep it super safe. If you do play the +3.5, I don't blame you. It's just, I don't know. Something about the +3.5, there's always some BS with some judge who is just like smoking something crazy and they don't judge the fight correctly and then you get screwed. I hate it. I'd rather just go for the +7.5. Yeah, the odds aren't as great, but I think it's a lot more reliable and I think it's a lot higher chance of actually hitting. And I think it's worth taking the odds cut for something that's a lot safer, especially with someone like Angela Hill who's so damn durable. You know, I did the same thing with fighters like Dan Ige, and I do these a lot, you know, and I'd rather take it a little bit more safe with the alternate spreads and someone that's super durable, because you are putting it in the hands of the judges. And it's the worst feeling ever when it's a clear 29-28, you know, it's clear as day, but some judge screws you and the +3.5 is just gone. And you're just like, what the hell was that? You know, it's like, it's the worst feeling ever. So kept it at +7.5 alternate spread. I think she should be able to at least get one damn round on all, or at least one judge's scorecard. I mean, I was about to pick Angela Hill to win this fight, and I know a lot of people like Angela Hill to win this fight. I think Angela Hill has a damn good chance to win this fight. So +7.5, I really like that line a lot. So instead of throwing these all into one big parlay, I split it up into 2 plays of the week for this week. So anyway, guys, that does it for the breakdown, or the betting breakdown video for UFC Vegas 109, Dolidze versus Hernandez. I know it's a little bit late. I was trying to get this video out as soon as possible, so sorry for being a little bit late with it, but I hope you guys got some value. I hope you guys find some lines that you like. I think it's going to be more of a live betting opportunity for this card as opposed to the pre-fight slate. You know, I think so. Obviously, as you can see, I got a ton of stuff in yellow. They're all the live betting opportunities I'm looking at. So I think this slate for the recap video on Sunday, man, it's going to be all over the place depending on how the live betting scene goes. So I think it's going to be all over the place. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys got some value. Thank you so much for watching. You know, thank you so much for all the recent love on all the recent videos. You know, it's been absolutely awesome. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, comment. Let me know if you like this style, if you like this format, if you want anything to change, like anything at all if you guys want to see from me, let me know in the comments. Because I read them all, you know, I try to get back to everyone. So, and thank you guys once again. I know I'm rambling, but thank you guys once again for all the support and all the love. It means a ton. So hopefully we'll make some money this week. And yeah, let's keep it pushing. So it's your boy Jacob from Topside MMA, and I'll see y'all soon. So peace.